Hey everyone, my name is Scott Dugan, and I'm an Ableton certified trainer from Atlanta, Georgia. I want to talk about updates to Push 2. Since I recorded Push 2 Explained, we've had a 9.7 software update, as well as a new version. We have Live 10, and with that comes some brand new layouts, some new workflow, and some great new visuals to help us use Push and access and touch our music. Now, of course, you do have to be using Live 10 with Push 2 to get these great new features. Now, the first thing I want to talk about are collections. Live 10 brought collections with it, and we can create collections of presets however we want, and we can access them from Push just like we would access them in the software. And here I have some presets and some samples that I'm going to use during this video. We can load those right from collections on Push. After that, let's talk about some new layouts. We have a new layout for drums or drum racks and simpler, as well as a new layout for melodic instruments. First, let's talk about a new layout for the drum rack. It's called 16 velocities. Now here we have our loop selector layout, and we can select a loop length or jump around in our clip. And we can program, we can play, whatever we want. After that, we have 64 pad layout, and this allows us to access all these pads and play all of them however we want. Now the new layout is called 16 velocities. We can see over here on the right, there's a quadrant dedicated to just selecting velocities. So I'm going to select a pad, it's this kick drum, and now I can play that kick drum with different velocities. We have low, all the way up to high or full velocity. And now we can record or punch into the sequencer in a new way with these 16 velocities. We can select a velocity and use just that velocity, or we can still play the old-fashioned way and play these pads however we want. Let me show you what that looks like. I'm going to select full velocity here, and I can punch that in to the sequencer up the top. Okay, if I want a lower velocity, I can select it and punch it at the top as well. I can also hit record and play these pads if I want to. And a little bit of mess up, so I just undo that. I can switch over to my snare. I can still record this in if I want to. Okay, or I can sequence that out. So I want full velocity, we'll do something like that. Or if I want something in between, I can do that as well. And notice that the brightness of those pads resemble the velocity that we've chosen down here at the bottom. If I turn on repeat and hold down a pad, I can use these pads to enter in repeating notes as well. Many ways to use this new layout. Now let's jump over to Simpler. Simpler, in slicing mode, gives us access to the same exact features. I have 64 slice mode or layout. I have the loop selector layout. I also have the 16 velocity layout, again when working with Simpler. So I can play this just like I'd expect to, or I can select a pad and have access to 16 different velocities, exactly the same as with the drum rack. Again, I can select a velocity and program it in, or I can hit record and play those pads, or I could perform over here, however I want. Now, while we're in Simpler, I want to talk about slice mode. We have new options to slice by. Transient, it's pretty standard. We're used to this. We can turn up or down the sensitivity to specify which transients activate a slice. We can go beyond that. We can slice by beat and specify a subdivision. We can also specify equal regions. Right now we've sliced this into 8 equal regions. We can turn that up to 16 or 32, all the way up to 64. And after that, we have manual. And we covered this in the Push to Explain video series. But very quickly, this allows us to manually add slice points. And we can turn off that pad slicing when we're ready. Now let's jump over to a melodic instrument. Here I have Wavetable loaded up, and it sounds phenomenal. Brand new synth with Live 10. And we're used to this layout, 64 note mode. If I hit layout again, we go to the melodic step sequencer, where again we're used to this mode, but there's a third new one. Sequencer plus 32 notes. Now this mode is pretty interesting. We have the sequencer at the top here, and then we have notes down here at the bottom. So I can hit record. And that's one way to enter notes in with this new layout. I'm going to undo all of that, and let me show you something brand new. If I play a chord, see how those pads kind of darken out a little bit? Or if I play a single note, now Push kind of remembers what chord I've played. So when I start sequencing this out at the top, I'm actually sequencing that chord. And if I want to change one of these, like these two, I play a new chord, tap that, new chord, tap that. And now if I want to get to my loop selector, I hold layout, and here we can see 3 bars. I just want 2. There's 2 bars. Hit play. And I have access to that loop selector in this layout by holding, in this layout by holding, and this layout by holding. If I jump back over to my drum rack, I can do something similar. Right now I'm in 16 velocity. Let's say I want to get to my loop selector. I can of course toggle through and get to it, or I can again hold layout. And now there's my loop selector. If I'm already in the loop selector layout, I can toggle to the 16 velocities just by holding. And if I'm in 64 pad mode, I can hold layout and get to my loop selector up there. Now the last thing I'm going to talk about in this video is the new clip mode, or the clip view up here. In previous versions, there was not much happening up here. But man, what an update. Watch what happens. Ready? We have access to our MIDI notes. Whoa, pretty awesome. And now, if I want to edit these notes, I can do that too. So if I want to edit, let's say this one, I can hold it. Now I can nudge, I can change the length by steps, or fine-tune change the length of that note. So it looks like this one right here, maybe a little off. Let's find it. There it is. Hold it down. I'm just going to nudge that more in time. Make it one step, and then finally change the length of that note. You can also change the velocity. Now, if I jump back over to my chord instrument, I can do the same thing here. I am in sequence plus 32 notes, and I can change the entire chord. If I want to make that longer, I can do that. Or if I want to do multiple at the same time, I can do that as well. And I can also crop. make that 1 bar crop, and now we have just 1 bar of those chords. Hit undo, we can go back. One thing I really like is after I select a note, it's actually going to highlight up here and tell me which note I'm playing. And now that we're looking at our clip, let me show you what holding layout does. You can hold it. We have our loop selector here, and we can specify just the 3rd bar, or just the 1st bar, or 1st bar and 2nd bar. And now you get some visual feedback when working with the loop selector. If we go over to the drum rack, we see all of those notes that we played as well. If we change our loop selector, same thing happens. Just the 2nd bar, just the 1st bar. If we want to do anything like delete, it makes it very obvious that we are deleting notes. I'll come back. There they are. Let's delete the kick drum. Now they're gone. There, pull them back. And again, just like in our melodic layout, we're going to select up at the top which notes we've touched. In the next video, let's take a look at workflow. I'll see you then.